behalf of the board of directors and staff, I want to welcome everybody and all the member organizations who have taken the time to be on the call today. Also to our special guest, Jason DeVos, who's the Director of Development with Canada Soccer. Warren Proctor, Provincial Sport Consultant with SAS Sport. Also, thanks goes to the staff and the SSA Board of Directors, some of who are on the call tonight, for their work making this meeting possible. These are unprecedented times that we're facing, and I want to applaud everyone for continuing to focus on soccer despite the challenges we are facing. We will get through this as a society and as soccer enthusiasts by working together. And if we capture the spirit of cooperation and support that we see daily in our communities, we can come out of this so much stronger. Since the suspension of soccer, our messaging has remained consistent. Our focus is being ready to return to play, and that will remain our focus in the weeks and months ahead. At some point, we'll be able to return to play, and for many people and many communities, soccer will be one of the things that people most look forward to, that helps them feel like we have returned our communities to health. Since the AGM, the board has tasked management with developing contingency plans and keeping up with issues in our society and across the province. Today, we want to hear from you to better understand the realities you are facing so that we can make good decisions that support us all during the pandemic and also to ensure the game is in a good place in the long run. I want to be open with you that we will not have all the answers today. There is much to consider, and we want to confirm that we'll be working from a plan. We have been very busy bringing our new board together and dealing with the urgent priorities of the pandemic and the association. We are in regular discussions, but we continue to collaborate while waiting for further information from Canada Soccer and our provincial authorities. In the coming weeks, armed with more insights from membership and better information about the pandemic, we'll be able to announce concrete plans and communicate decisions as we are able. And we want to know how we can help. I want to assure you that your concerns are important to us, and we are committed to listening and to responding to your questions when we have done our proper due diligence. For now, we ask for your patience. Let's be open to think differently. Let's be open to non-traditional means of keeping engaged through soccer. Let's remain committed to return to play when that becomes possible. Let's focus not only on the present, but the long-term health of the game. So with all that said, I'll pass it over to Doug, our Executive Director, who's going to outline the agenda for tonight.
Thanks very much, Lisa. So first off, we'll just run quickly through logistics. We'll talk just briefly about our focus, what it has been for the last while, what it'll continue to be. We're going to ask Jason DeVos to share some thoughts around things that are happening at Canada Soccer that we can all learn from and benefit from in the long run here. And then we'll get into your experiences, your questions, and we'll document those. Again, Lisa suggested we may not have all the answers for everything tonight, but we're committed to listening and to interacting with you more often. So we're preparing tonight as the first of these major interactions since we had at the AGM. We have another one planned on April 28th, which we can talk more about as we go. So again, just a reminder of some of the logistics. For the most part, folks are doing very well in that, and our audio is very good and clean right now, so that's excellent. So if you are speaking, please unmute and then remute yourself as soon as you've asked your question. So raise your hand if you want to be recognized, and of course the raise your hand feature is noted here, so you can see it on your screens. And mute until you're recognized to speak. We'd ask you to keep one question or comment at a time at the start, and then we will open that up more as the call goes further. If you wish to direct your questions to a specific person, please let us know who that might be, and we'll have those folks unmute and get engaged. And again, once your question has been asked and answered, please remute. If you're unstable or have background noise, please choose to ask your questions via the chat function. And remember, tonight we're focused on being the solution long-term. We have an interim problem. We're going to get through that problem by working well together. And we're very much looking forward to listening to you folks and to some of our guests tonight here. So with that, I'll just mention some of our focus, what it's been and what will continue to be over the next weeks and months. So we've been working since the AGM to develop contingency plans that we'll be presenting forward to the board in the weeks ahead here. We start with our standing committee meetings right away on our board. So we have risk management and governance this week. We have audit and finance next week, and then the board planning session coming up on April 25th, which I'll talk about. Obviously, we engage with our partners nationally and provincially regularly. We have regular meetings with presidents of Canada Soccer, with executive directors, technical directors, and referee officers. And we're meeting for the first time with SAS Sport Groups tomorrow, so that's something we're looking forward to. We've been prioritizing our work, obviously based on some internal reassignment. We communicated layoffs, interim layoffs, and we're developing our plans further for service as we obviously working on our communications and interactions with membership is important, and we'll talk about more of that as through the call. We're preparing for opportunities engagement for during suspension of activity. And we're going to talk more tonight and hear from you folks about return to play scenarios. And that's our primary focus tonight, is thinking about return to play at some point. We don't know when that is. So in the weeks ahead, we'll be discussing fees and policy amendments, presenting that stuff to the board on April 25th, and then preparing for the next discussion with membership on April 28th. So that's some of the stuff we have been doing and some of the stuff we will be doing. And without further ado, we'll welcome our good friend, and we're really grateful to Director of Development for Canada Soccer, Jason DeVos, for being with us tonight. So Jason, we'll give you the floor, and please feel free to talk about things that are important to you and what we're hearing at Canada Soccer level, and we really appreciate you being on the call tonight.
Perfect. Thanks, Doug, and thank you, Lisa, as well, and thank you all for being here. I'm certain that there are better things that you could be doing with your time right now, or perhaps you just need a break from your family members and you've secluded yourself in your home office. I think Lisa summed it up best when she said that we are in unprecedented times. Certainly in my lifetime, I've never experienced anything like this, and that's over 35 years in football now. For nearly 40 years, I'm that old. But these are uncharted waters that we're in, and when you're in uncharted waters, it's always easy to think about worst case scenarios. And I think the message tonight from me, from Canada Soccer, is we're all in this together, all of us, and that extends right down to the volunteer-driven grassroots club that has 5 teams, right straight up through to our men's and women's national team. We're all in this together, and sometimes a crisis can provide an opportunity to connect like we've never connected before. And I'll talk a little bit tonight about some of the work that we're doing to try and connect with people across the country at every level of the game, and also what I'm seeing and hearing back from membership across the country from coast to coast. And I think connection is probably a great word to sum up what I'm seeing primarily. Is people are starting to realize just how important their clubs are to them, their academies are to them, their districts, their provinces, their provincial associations, the relationships that we've built with each other over the years. It's always a stress test, I suppose, is a good way to put it. When there's a crisis, how willing are we to put our hand up and ask for help? How willing are we to lend a hand to our neighbors, to our colleagues, to our competitors on the field when they need assistance? What I'm seeing overwhelmingly is a desire to help and a desire to become a wider soccer community. And that's really encouraging. I think it's one of the real silver linings that we're going to see coming out of this global pandemic. I've said this to my staff repeatedly in the last few weeks. We're going to be better for this. We're going to be better, soccer leaders, but I think more importantly, we're going to be better human beings. We're going to be a lot more considerate. We're going to be a lot more patient. We're going to be a lot more willing to listen to other people's perspectives and points of view. Oftentimes in our soccer industry, we get so consumed with the competition that we dismiss people. We dismiss their opinions. We dismiss their perspectives. And I think that's a very slippery slope to be on because it leads to a very fractured relationship. And I think my right-hand man, who's not on the call tonight, but is in your fair province, Mr. Dave Nutt, who I know you're all very familiar with, he sums it up best in that he talks about competition and how you view competition, whether you view it as war, where you're trying to annihilate the opposition and conquest over them and prove your superiority, or if you view it as collaboration, where it's a mutually beneficial experience where both parties come away with a positive experience from having competed. And I feel that we're moving much more in that direction. It's certainly what I'm seeing in my my daily and weekly update calls with staff across the country, with provincial technical and executive directors, the leaders of the provincial associations, the territorial associations. I'm seeing a lot of people willing to collaborate and willing to work collectively to try and find answers and find solutions. I liked what Lisa said at the start as well about not having all the answers. I certainly don't have all the answers. I can't tell you when soccer is going to resume because I don't know that. I don't think anyone in Canada knows that. We are very much following the guidance and advice of the Public Health Agency of Canada, our Sport Medicine Committee, and we were following the guidelines and recommendations that are put in place by the government and the medical experts about this unprecedented situation. So it could be a month, it could be 6 months, we don't know. And I wouldn't want to speculate on anything like that because I simply don't have enough information to do so. What I do know is that the priority for all of us is that everyone remains safe, that you stay home, that you follow the guidelines of your local, regional, district, provincial health authorities, and practice physical distancing so that we can flatten this curve and hopefully get back to normal life in the interim. So that's a ways off, but in the interim, what we've been doing is working very hard behind the scenes. I had a call with a colleague out west, farther west than Saskatchewan today, and he asked, how are things going? What's it been like? And I said, surprisingly, it's been busier than normal, if that's even possible. What we've done is essentially 3 months of work in the space of about 3 weeks. And I'll talk a little bit about that from a coach education perspective. Ironically, I'll go back about 6 weeks. About 6 weeks ago, I had a conversation with two of my staff members, Stuart Neely, our manager of coach education, and Jim Laughlin, our master coach developer. And both of them were going to Ottawa to participate in a conference through the NCCP. And I'd said to them that when they were in Ottawa, I wanted them to get their heads together one night and spend some time discussing what delivering coach education completely online could look like. And we had a heated discussion, I think is a good way to put it, about the efficacy, the ability of people to fully grasp an online coach education program, and is it the best approach? We all kind of agreed that we have to keep that in-person aspect because it's where you build real relationships with people. And but I'd said to them, we might not have a choice. We might have to consider how we do things and look for a different solution, look for a different way to do this, because more and more the research that I do into coach education and some of the barriers that exist across the country, accessibility is absolutely one of the barriers. And I think in your circumstances, being one of the smaller provinces in Canada, with a smaller player base, smaller coaching base, it's not feasible for us to be able to deliver a children's license, a youth license, a B license, an A license every year in Saskatchewan. But we could deliver that every year online, and trying to figure out what that experience might look like. And ironically, about 3 weeks after we had this conversation, the global pandemic hits. All sanctioned soccer is suspended, and now we're finding all of our interactions are taking place through this type of a forum where we're having video conferences on a daily basis. I spend up to 8 hours a day, sometimes more, on video calls, and just building those relationships with people. And what my staff have been able to do in a very short period of time is take our community stream workshops, the Active Start, Fundamentals, Learn to Train, and Soccer for Life workshops, and convert them into an online format so that you, the coaches across the country, can go through the content on your own time. You can sit at home and do one module at a time. You can do 4 modules in a row. You can do it over a weekend. You can stretch it out over a 5-week period. It's entirely up to you. But you'll have access to the theory component, which is what we would normally deliver in the classroom. And to fulfill your training, to complete your training, you will still have to complete the practical field session. But what this allows us to do is it reduces the amount of in-person time that's required. I know that's one of the big challenges that's come back to me from coast to coast, that the community stream workshops take up a lot of time, especially when you get to the Learn to Train and Soccer for Life stage. It's a full weekend. I don't know about you, but I have a pretty busy life. And when I tell my wife and my kids and my 2 dogs that I'm going to be gone for an entire weekend, it generally doesn't go down very well. So it's almost a challenge that we face that we've had to try and overcome. So one of the big benefits of delivering that classroom component online is that can be done on your own time when it's most convenient for you, rather than on fixed dates that take place. The other piece too is it allows us to be a lot more deliberate about the time we do spend on field. And I believe it was a few years ago, it might have been Michael Gramiak who came up with this suggestion. Raheem, correct me if I'm wrong. If Dave was on the call, I know that he would know for sure. But when we'd originally presented the concept of a blended approach to the community stream workshops and delivering some of the theory online and then delivering the practical component, I think it was Michael that had suggested that it might be a good idea if the club TD could deliver the practical training within the confines of his or her own club. And I remember having a bit of a light bulb moment. I looked across at Dave and I said, he gets it, he's figured it out. And that's the ideal scenario. I mean, ultimately what the club TD's role is to train and develop an ongoing relationship with the coaches in his or her club, and then continue that development on a weekly basis over the duration that coach is working at that club, either as a volunteer coach or as a paid coach. And then that was really the genesis of all of this. And it's just been expedited simply because we've had no choice. We can no longer deliver coach education workshops in person. So Jim and Stuart primarily have worked with coach education staff across the country, including Raheem Mohammed, who did a great job for us in reviewing the content. And we've put that training online. So that's now available for you to register. And Raheem, jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the link that's up on the Canada Soccer website right now to the coach education registration page at Saskatchewan Soccer is live at the moment and accepting registration. So if you have coaches in your club who wish to take that training, haven't had the opportunity to do so yet, that opportunity is now online, and you can be doing that from the comfort of your own home while this lockdown is in place, and try to maximize your time at home for your education. The other piece that we're working on is the delivery of our licensing stream workshops online as well. So as you may or may not be aware, we had plans this year to deliver over 15 different licensing workshops, 7 youth license courses, 5 children's license courses from coast to coast, as well as a B license in Saskatchewan that we had planned, an A license and a pro license that we had on the cards as well. Unfortunately, because of the lockdown, we don't have the ability to deliver those workshops in person. But what my staff have been doing over the last 3 weeks has been working tirelessly around the clock to get the early modules in those workshops converted into an online format. So both the children's and youth license workshops that were planned to be delivered this year will still go ahead, and they will be delivered online in a different format. The B license that we had planned to deliver in person in Saskatchewan will be delivered online, so that coaches still have access to that training. And one of the things that I suspect, and I was speaking with my staff today about this, I suspect that we're going to come out of this with a much better appreciation for the learning needs of the coaches who take courses across the country. I'm pretty sure I'm speaking to the, preaching to the choir a little bit when I say that if we ran every workshop in Toronto or Vancouver, it would be a little bit inconvenient for coaches in Saskatchewan to be able to take those courses, not to mention the added expense of having to travel multiple times to a different province to participate in a coaching workshop, oftentimes delivered over a short period of time where you get overwhelmed with a tsunami of information that you can't process and you don't have the time to reflect on. And one of the benefits of the online delivery system is that it gives us the opportunity to reflect. And I think that's one of the biggest learnings that I've had over my career as a coach. It's not the moments of frantic activity where you actually learn. It's when you can go away and sit quietly on your own or with your colleagues and have a conversation about what you've experienced and what you've taken away. So that reflection component of coach education is absolutely crucial. It's not until after an event happens where you actually sit down and go through a deliberate review process of that experience where the real gold is. And that's where you really see growth happen. So for us, I look at coach education as an ongoing journey. It's a lifelong journey. It's not a destination. Getting your youth license or your children's license or your B license or your A license is not the end of the road. It should be the start of your journey of exploring different ideas and different solutions and different ways of teaching. And if you have that mindset where you're open-minded and you're looking to grow and develop, you're going to succeed as a coach. You're going to affect so many players in a positive way because you're going to be open to different ideas. And that's going to be one of the big takeaways from this whole experience, I believe, is that we will become better at what we do because we have to. And it's about meeting the needs of the learners who are in our care. And that's you, that's your coaches, that's you as individuals, technical directors, club leaders, provincial leaders, district leaders, who are dialing in to try and deliver the best possible soccer experience for the kids in your communities. So that's taken up a fair bit of my time over the last couple of weeks. On the club licensing side of things as well, we are continuing with the review process across the country of applications that are coming forward. And I just want to talk a little bit about, some of the criteria and what club licensing is for and why we've put this in place. It was an interesting process, the genesis of going through that with Dave Nutt. I'd often say to Dave, I think a lot of the confusion is coming from the fact that people are not able to wrap their heads around what we're trying to do here. We're not trying to tell people that they're not doing the right job. They're not doing things the way they should be doing them. We're trying to help them get better at what they do. And ultimately, the conversations that we would have from coast to coast, I would always ask the same question to start off with. Why do you do what you do? I'm pretty sure that I asked it in Saskatchewan the last time I was there. My memory's a bit foggy because I was on my deathbed, if I recall, Doug. I wasn't feeling the best, but I always ask that question of every group I speak to. Why do you do what you do? And overwhelmingly, the number one answer is, I do it for the kids. And it's interesting, if you really sit and reflect and think about why you're spending your evening listening to me talk about soccer in Canada, you're doing it for the kids in your community so that they can have a great experience with the game that you maybe fell in love with when you were a child. You want to give them something better than what you had when you were younger. And that's incredibly noble of you. And when we think about it from that perspective, club licensing makes so much sense, because what we're asking for is for clubs to do 5 things. Provide a safe, fun, accessible and inclusive, developmentally appropriate environment that meets the conditions of membership. That's it. And that's the differentiation between membership and non-membership, and unorganized play in the park, kicking around with your mates. Safe, fun, accessible, inclusive, developmentally appropriate. And within those boundaries, we're asking clubs to create opportunity for equality. You know, I think one of the things about our country that I love the best is that we treat everyone equally. It doesn't matter where you're from. I mean, at some level, almost all of us are from somewhere else. My parents came to Canada in 1969 from the Netherlands and set up shop, and they were going to make Canada their home. And I was born and raised here, so I always consider myself a Canadian. And I look at colleagues that I played with over the years for the national team and where they came from and their background, their story. You look at players like Alphonso Davies, who this country took in. And I remember saying when Fonzie was first breaking onto the scene, what I love most about his story is that it is Canadian to its core, that people took him in and gave him an opportunity to have a better life in this country. And he's now reaping the benefits of that and paying that back to the country. And I think that is the core of what it means to be a community and to be Canadian, is that we try and elevate each other to a higher level. And that includes men and women. And I think I have to applaud Saskatchewan soccer for being one of, if not the most progressive provinces in Canada in terms of equality. And if you look at the gender equality on the SSA board, 3 of the last 5 presidents have been female. SSA is one of the leading provinces in terms of female coaching requirements. And I know that some of you may have some concerns about that because it's not easy. It's not easy to find female coaches. It's not easy to train and develop female coaches. But if we don't raise our standards and raise our expectations, it's never going to change. And it's not women that have to fight for equality, it's men. You know, we the men who have had a stranglehold on the game in our country for many, many years, we've created an environment that is inhospitable to female participants. And there's a reason that there are so few female coaches in Canada, because the experience that they're going through is not conducive to wanting to belong anymore. So we have to change that. And we have to be progressive. And we have to be forward thinking about our expectations. And we have to hold each other accountable to that, not in a negative way. And I certainly would never want this to come across as being critical, but we have to hold each other accountable to standards. And it's not easy. You know, change is always very difficult for people to go through because it's far, far easier to default to the status quo of what we've always done. You know, and I think one of the most damaging statements that I've heard over the years is, well, this is how we've always done things. Well, sometimes we have to break the mold and change the way we do things if we're going to go in a new direction. And I feel strongly that we have an obligation, a responsibility to the young boys and girls coming up through our system to give them role models, both male and female. And right now, there just aren't enough female coaches in our game for there to be role models there. And there are some fantastic women in your province who are leading the charge. And that's why I applaud Saskatchewan Soccer for the stance that it's taking with club licensing, with the coaching requirements, and also for the requirements to have minimum standards for female participation as coaches. Nothing's going to change unless we work to support female coaches and create an environment where they want to participate, where they're considered to be equal. And they have a seat at the table to join in those technical discussions, to have a voice, to have a say. You might be surprised at how progressive we can become overnight. I remember when John Herdman made the change from the women's team to the men's team, and being very proud of the fact that in our country, we can do this because we view both genders as equal. And that's reflected in our behavior. So, you know, I think that's one of the big pieces that I wanted to stress tonight. I'm happy to take any questions anybody might have about the status of club licensing and some of the requirements. But what I'll do, Doug, is I'll just hold it there. I'll just press pause and ask if anyone has any questions on anything, or if there's anything that SSA might want to ask or get clarity on while I'm rabbiting away here for 30 minutes or so.
Well, thanks, Jason. And yeah, we've got Jason and he's going to stay on the call tonight. So yeah, we can take some initial questions for Jason and then we'll invite conversations with membership about provincial affairs, but that may bring us back to comments from Jason, or maybe there's comments from others. Warren Proctor's on the call as well. He's hasn't prepared anything for us specifically because he was late invite by myself here, but we're glad to have him on. So that's what we'll do, Jason. But yeah, let's open the floor and have some conversations with Jason DeVos right now. So let's go, Mr. Graham. You're up first.
Hey, Jason, thanks for joining us. I appreciate the insight there. So I've been going through a lot of the PTSO requirements. And so I just had a question regarding the status of the Canada Soccer Guide to Accessibility and Inclusion, as well as the requirements for the Skill Center.
Okay.
I imagine that these are a little bit on the back burner, but I'm just curious as to when you had in mind that these standards would be released for us.
Yesterday?
Oh, yesterday. Okay.
Yeah, it's, you make a good point, Michael, and thank you for the question. Priorities have shifted significantly in the last few weeks, and really it has been a big push to try and get our coach education content online as quickly as possible. In an ideal scenario, we'd love to talk about implementing the Skill Center requirements at every organization that delivers a grassroots program this summer. The reality is it's going to take time to phase those in. Right now, we've started with the National Youth Club license holders. They have those documents and the guidelines. And I can assure you that there's nothing in there that's going to scare you. Anyone who has been following the world of football over the years and has seen how the concept of talent identification, talent development, skill acquisition is going. It's about delaying selection for as long as possible and providing kids with an opportunity to blossom in a good environment. And that's essentially what the Skill Center is all about. It's a concept that revolves around the player. I think I may have said this the last time I was in Saskatchewan, but the first day on my job in the office at BMO Field, I wrote 7 words on the whiteboard: the needs of the player come first. And they've stayed there ever since. And the Skill Center revolves around that. What does the player need to have a great experience with soccer? Well, they need opportunity first and foremost. They need accessibility. They need a safe environment. They need an enjoyable environment, and they need a developmentally appropriate environment. And it's no coincidence that the principles of the club licensing program underpin the Skill Center program. We want to give technical directors like yourself the freedom to group players as required based on the upcoming competition, based on desire, based on the player's appetite. What we don't want is to pigeonhole kids into boxes where we determine that they don't have talent at the age of 8 or 10 or 12. Nobody in Canada, no one in the world can tell you which 8-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old is going to go on and play professional football or play for the national team. And if anyone tells you they can say that, you should walk the other way, because they're not telling you the truth. Those who study talent acquisition, talent development on a daily, weekly, monthly basis will tell you that you have to delay selection as long as possible. You have to give kids the opportunity to fall in love with sport so that they'll put in the hours, because it requires hours. It requires time. But it more than anything requires a love of the game. And our current system doesn't foster that enough. When we select kids at too young an age and stream them into a talented stream at too young an age, we're giving up on the majority. And the reality is the majority is where the golden player might reside and just hasn't had a chance to blossom yet. So I would love to tell you that we're going to be releasing these documents nationwide, coast to coast, and everyone's going to be up and running in 2 months' time. The reality is, based on the current situation with COVID-19 and the suspension of all sanctioned soccer activities, it's probably going to be 2021 before that's implemented. But we will work with our member associations in Saskatchewan, the SSA, and we will work with Raheem and his staff to be able to share those documents with you for your thoughts, for your consideration, and for your suggestions. There have been some great suggestions that have come back to us when we've circulated these documents in the past, and just about the realities that you face as clubs. So happy to share that as and when Raheem and his staff feel it's appropriate, and we can have those discussions hopefully the next time I'm out there in person.
Sounds good. Thanks for the update, Jason.
Perfect.
Thanks, Jason. Any other questions for Jason right now? Lara?
I also just wanted to jump in and say that, Mike, I have seen a version of the Guide to Accessibility and Inclusion, and although it is not published at the moment, it is close to done, and you might find some of the things already incorporated on some of the sections of our website in an informal way. So I would take a look at some of the things we've added in the last couple weeks.
Thank you, Lara. All right, we'll move on, and thank you, Jason. Well, you're going to stay on, and I'm sure there's comments and questions that might come your way as we go forward here.
Absolutely, not a problem.
We'll just get into some of this stuff. So we want to hear from you guys. So I'm going to put up sort of a generic slide, and we'd like to hear from a few member organizations as we get going, and organizations of different sizes. And I really want to thank Jason for his comments. And obviously working together is the solution to getting through this piece, and we want to come out of this stronger, as we've said. So but we want to hear what you're experiencing. What are your participants asking? How are your board, your staff, your membership feeling? What are some of the contingency plans that you're considering? We'll talk about those things. And what are you currently offering? What are you doing at the moment? And how can we help? That's a focus of the call tonight. And as we go through this, we might get to different slides, different concepts, and we have a variety of slides for that. But just like to offer the floor to the membership right now and focus on some of these types of questions. And then we'll drill down a little bit more as we go along. So remember that we have 68 different people on the call right now, which we're very grateful for, and from all varieties of member organizations. So let's give space to each other in the call, and let's focus with a positive, proactive approach to return to play, which is a prominent theme we're going to get into tonight. But just generally, let's if any member organization wants to raise their hand and comment on any of these types of questions, we'll ask for a few, and we certainly won't go through the list of 68, but we'd just like to get some perspectives from you and what's going on in your communities and in your member organizations. So anybody want to get us going with that type of comment? Tyler Weyburn, thank you.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, Weyburn Soccer just sent a survey out to all of our members that have registered so far. And I'd just like to share some of the percentages that came back from us. We had about a 50-50 split. We had about 250 people respond to the survey. We were about a 50-50 split to people who would be willing to play soccer later in the year, say July, August, if that was an option for return to play, and the others were not willing to do that. We had probably about 65% of our members asked that if we weren't to start on start date in May, for their registration fee to be returned. And we also asked the question, if we return, what would be what would people be looking like for traveling for games? And we had quite a large number, 40%, say they would not be able to afford to travel outside to play games. So just some of the information we collected as an organization, and just thought I'd share.
Thanks for that, Tyler. I appreciate that. And certainly this notion of affordability is top of mind for a lot of folks, and it's going to be prominent in our thinking and our planning. So we appreciate those comments and appreciate your leadership to reach out to your membership. That's tremendous survey response. We had 250 responses. That's fantastic. So I appreciate that. Any other member organizations want to jump in? Just some opening comments about what's going on. Wendy up in Meridian, up in Lloydminster. Thank you.
Thank you. We have two plans right now. One is that we will be canceling our outdoor season that we have currently registered players in, and then setting up a contingency plan to reintroduce a program, a 5-week program in the summer if soccer is allowed to be a participating sport based on our location. It's a little bit trickier because we are by provincial city. So even if Saskatchewan were to introduce less social distancing and restrictions, we as a city have to follow a different governance because we have our own charter. So we're in a little bit of a different predicament than some of the other communities that are out there.
Thanks, Wendy. That's an interesting one. Of course, being a border city, you guys are very unique and you have multiple governing authorities there. And as you said, your own charter. We talk about this at Canada Soccer level quite a bit. If the suspension is about to be lifted, will there be regionalization? Because obviously different parts of the country will be in different circumstances as this pandemic carries forward. So those are conversations that we're monitoring at the national level, Wendy, and certainly appreciate that you have at least two different sets of information coming to you from the Alberta side and Saskatchewan side. So thanks for those comments. Appreciate that. Any other members want to jump in and talk about what's going on for them? Mark, Saskatoon Youth, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. We just basically want to give you a very, very quick overview. One of the biggest things that we've experienced right now is the City of Saskatoon has banned the use of all the outdoor soccer fields until the end of June, which obviously curtails any kind of plan for getting on a field before the end of June, regardless of what else was going to be going on federally or provincially. So that's one of the challenges that we face. So that's where we're at. We're basically preparing, for the worst, and we're hoping for the best. We have contingency plans in potentially for an outdoor season. We're not at the point yet of canceling the outdoor season as yet. That is something we're going to be discussing with our zones and our zone presidents in an upcoming meeting very soon. So we're looking at federal subsidies for employees, keeping our staff going, to keep them busy and productive, which they are doing a tremendous amount of work for us and for our organization. So that's really where we're at the moment. And I believe you're not wanting to speak for all the zones, but the zones are doing their own things in regards to keeping their training going with their online coaches, their TDs. So that's where we're at.
Thanks very much, Mark. Lisa, I see you're unmuted. Do you have a comment?
No, I was just unmuting just in case I needed to comment. Yep.
Well, thanks. So yeah, and we understand, Mark, that everybody's local realities are different. In Saskatoon, they declared the fields closed until end of June. And other organizations, I know I spoke to Regina recently, and they're actually confirming bookings but not allocating fields. So they've taken a different approach. And each of the local realities might be quite different in terms of how their municipalities rule on it. And of course, the system will evolve as the pandemic emerges. There was some hopeful information this morning, but certainly nobody's naive enough to think we're out of the woods anytime soon. And so we're going to continue to talk about contingency planning tonight. Is there any other members that want to jump in and just talk generally about some of their experiences before we move into specific slides and questions? All right, thank you. So I'll move on and we'll talk about return to play options, okay? So clearly, as Jason said, and as everybody understands, we have to base our decisions on direction that comes from above. So at this point in time, Canada Soccer has chosen to suspend play indefinitely, and I think that's a good choice. A lot of people are looking for very specific information on when choices will be made and when decisions will be made, and each of us have realities that are a little different. So we want to confirm to you that the choice to return to play is really up to each of your member organizations. Wendy alluded to the fact that they may be canceling what they would call traditional outdoor, but planning for an alternative. Tyler obviously is researching that type of thing in Weyburn and considering, well, can we start play later? And so we encourage you not to give up too early. We think that soccer will be a very important aspect of people's lives. And so we want to be open to think differently. But ultimately, the choice to return to play is up to you folks. And, you know, should you choose to not go forward, there's no penalty from us. We respect and understand that decision that you've made, and that's entirely up to you to be made on a local level. And we would encourage you, if you could, to connect with us before you communicate those decisions, because we're doing similar things at Canada Soccer where we try to align our messaging. It's important that we do that if we can, but we understand that choice is up to you. So we'd like to hear from others out there and about some of the options you're considering for return to play, whether it's later in the year and or some different formats of tournaments possibly, or maybe it's more of a festival approach. We'd love to hear some of those things and what you folks are thinking. And so if anybody has any options to return to play that you're considering, we'd like to hear about that.
Also, Doug, if anybody, other member organizations or clubs have done something similar to Weyburn, maybe polled your membership to find out what their, if playing a summer season is an option or something they're willing to do. Has anybody else done that as well?
Thanks. Appreciate that. Or is there any scenario development going out there for different types of formats? Or is it just too early for you to be thinking about that? What's your thinking?
Maybe just share something else, Doug, too, from the President's Forum meetings that we have. We meet once a week and talk about, what's kind of happening across the country. And similar to this kind of conversation that we're having tonight with our membership, other provinces are having with their memberships as well. And I think the theme is pretty consistent, that no one's kind of giving up yet. They're encouraging their members to continue their registration process, maybe not taking payment at this time, because should there not be a season, doing those refunds would be quite onerous. So maybe still encouraging registration, still having that thumb on the pulse connection with their membership, but not quite giving up quite yet until we know what's going to happen. So that is kind of what's happening across the country.
Anyone want to jump in on return to play? Oh, Jason, thank you, from Weyburn.
Sorry about that. I was having trouble muting. No, and another thing I'd like to add with Tyler putting out the survey definitely was definitely a benefit. We also met the other night and we did talk about things, and we talked actually probably more on the realistic side, and instead of giving ourselves the false hope of seeing something in June, and then listening to how other cities are shutting down the parks till at least the end of June at the earliest type of thing. One of the things that we did, because the commitment may not be there to bring back a whole club, we actually talked about even just depending on how much time was left, so a time frame was very adjustable, but just to make like a family day, a barbecue, maybe a short season, whether it was even just 3-4 weeks, and then waiving all fees. And this would be something just that Weyburn Soccer could give back to our community, just to boost the spirits and everything like that. So these are just some of the things we kind of talked about, and it was definitely boosted our spirits as a board, just to be able to talk like that and see what we could do to help our community. So those are just some of the ideas.
Thanks, Jason, and applaud that kind of thinking. Again, soccer will be important when we're able to get back to it, and we don't know when that will be, but we encourage you to think that way. And I do appreciate that we do have to have realistic thinking. And so we'll certainly be demonstrating some of that as we go along and as we learn more as well. And we understand what we're dealing with. And it's probably you know, we're maybe downplaying the word summer and talking about return to play in general more so than that. But I saw that TJ had, he was unmuted for a second. TJ, did you want to get in?
He may have left the call there, Doug. I don't know.
Sorry, maybe I missed him. So Lara, I'll just invite you in. There's a number of things that you've done of some work recently and just publicized 8 ways to return to play. You want to provide any comments on that, please?
Sure. So a few people have called some of the different staff to just ask about some scenarios and what options are. And something that I was hearing, and as well my colleagues, were that people might be thinking about returning to the season in a traditional season sense. And we really wanted to think outside the box and think about options that we may have to just return to play without potentially returning to the traditional season. We think that there's a lot of potential to return to soccer to play, period. So we wrote a short article. It's called 8 Ways to Return to Play This Year. We had said this summer, but we're trying to keep it realistic. So you can find that on the homepage of the website under the news section. We have some ideas there, including a jamboree, how-to jamboree document, which we have resurrected from our files, which was a model that was used earlier in the 2010s, like 2012, still a functional model. So some ideas that we had were returning later summer. Some of our members host September and October seasons, and those are successful for them. Maybe you could host 4 week at a time seasons, so month by month, and people pay for what they can play. Or you know, and if they can only join for 1 month because that's all their time or budgets allow, then that's okay. And if they can come for 2 or 3 months, maybe those are options. So we have a few more ideas coming down the pipe for articles to help help spur some thinking. And if you have any ideas, we would also love to hear them. So you can contact me through email or phone, and I'd love to chat with you about that.
Thanks, Lara. I'll just leave this slide for a second if there's any other comments. Otherwise, I'll shift gears to the next slide. That's all. If anybody else wants to get in. So we'll talk about registration and fees. So right now, the questions on fees that you've asked at the AGM are well documented, and we're certainly prepared to get to work on that with the board in the next week or so. So where they remain under consideration. Again, reminder that there's no penalty for you to register. We're covering all the costs of ramp registration this year. And if you decide not to go forward with your season, there's no penalty to you. Folks remain MAP eligible, and there's MAP webinars tomorrow and on tomorrow and the following day. So that's Wednesday, Thursday, sorry. Can't remember what day of the week it is. And so questions like, will fees be reduced due to shortened season? Will the fee increase that we initiated in the fall be withheld? These types of questions are very much being considered at the board in the next week or so. And so again, we encourage you to continue registration without requiring payment if you're ready and willing to go forward with return to play at some point. And ultimately, refunds are decided by local policy. So for us, just because you're registered in the system, ultimately, if you're going to continue to play, we'll have a process where you confirm that with us, and then registration fees will come out accordingly. But at some point, you may choose to withdraw, and then we'll obviously not have any expectations about registration fees at that point. So those are some comments about registration and fees. Eden, you have a couple of updates on ramp and Paystone updates, if you don't mind doing those. And then we'll invite questions or comments from membership in regard to this slide that we have up. Eden, are you able to join us?
There we go. I was speaking into a unmuted phone, but muted on the computer. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can. Thank you.
Perfect. So I'm just going to continue with what Doug was saying regarding to our member organizations that have been receiving registrations through the new RAMP system and possibly receiving payments as well. If you've signed up for your Paystone online merchant account with RAMP for your online payments, I've spoken with them today regarding their account monthly fee. If you are not going to be receiving any credit card payments for the next couple of months but would like to still keep your account, they will be setting up a reduced monthly fee cost. You just need to let me know and I can get you in contact with the representative who will set that up on your account. If you are looking at not having any activation on your Paystone account, so this is your online merchant provider, for say over exceeding 6 months, you can close your Paystone account and then open it up after that and just pay the setup fee. There's a couple different options, or if you want to continue to receive your online credit card payments, the monthly fee will stay the same and your account will still be active, but they do have a couple of options just depending if you've set up your Paystone online merchant account and you'd like to potentially look at reducing some of your annual fees with that account. So just let me know. You can contact me by email or by phone, and I can get you in line with Peter over at Paystone. Now, with any of your refunds that you might be potentially thinking of doing with your online credit card payments, a thing to note, if you haven't seen already, on your registration dashboard on your RAMP system, there'll be a couple of notes that they've put up. It was released on March 31st, and one of them being refunds to credit cards from the RAMP system. So if you are refunding any individuals through RAMP from a credit card payment back to a credit card, just note that your transaction fees are doubled when you are doing refunds directly to a credit card because it's essentially another transaction being done. So instead of being a 2% transaction fee, it will be a 4% transaction fee depending on the credit card. So if you are able to, do check refunds if it's for large amounts that you're refunding, or just as Doug was stating, receive registrations but have a dollar amount attached to it, but maybe don't collect payments as of now because administratively it's probably going to save you time in the future if we do have to process refunds. And we can always open up credit card payments to be made after the fact once you are receiving payments. That's all, Doug.
Thanks, Eden. So if you have any
Eden?
questions or comments, go ahead.
There's
TK.
one question on the chat here.
Yeah,
Yep.
Just does RAMP allow credits from Percy at Hollandia?
Credit as in a balance. I'm
Yeah,
not sure what that means.
I think what I'm interpreting is does it allow a credit on a person's account if they've registered but are not able to play or going to play or whatever the case may be?
Yeah, I can clarify there if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah, actually, I put the question in before the answer. The answer came already, so I'm good.
Perfect.
It was regarding the credit cards refunds.
Okay.
Thanks.
So
No
TJ
problem.
has his hand up.
Yeah, sorry, Doug. I was having issues with the audio. That's why I couldn't answer your question earlier there. Do you want
No
me to
worries.
still talk about it, or are we good?
Yeah, you go ahead if you have any comments. I'm glad to have you invited. I noticed you were getting close to saying something and then it dropped off, so I thought I'd bring you back in if I could. So.
Yeah, no, for sure. Sorry, I was just having issues with audio for some reason. So as far as FC Regina goes, so we opened the registrations early for youth this year. So we already have close to 500 members registered before we actually the pandemic hit us. Now because of that, there's about a lot of changes in the plans and all. So that's a change which we have to adapt, and so we are working on different scenarios as far as that goes. So there's June 1st start, there's June 15th, and then there's July start. As soon as we hit July, of course, we have to keep it in mind that usually our youth season is done July the 15th. So we are we have to change the season quite a bit. So we are probably planning to just go with the games rather than training and games every week, or we do 1 week training and 1 week a game, or vice versa and stuff. And as far as adult membership goes, like our registration is open, but all the registrations are cash only, so they are basically, we are not collecting any payments. And we are encouraging our members to register, because we still want to know exactly how many people are actually planning to play or interested in playing, so we have a better idea and we can plan better. And our membership is very receptive to that, and a lot more registrations we have seen since we have opened up the cash registrations. We have around 75 teams registered. Usually we have between 100 and 120 registered every year. We're always gonna have those teams who are on the cusp, whether they should register or wait and all. So, but we are very open to accommodating all different scenarios and accommodating all different teams and players.
Thanks, TJ. It's good. It's a good example of how you can prepare to be flexible. So we applaud you for that and appreciate you sharing that update, and thank you for that.
No worries. Thank you.
So again, I'll invite any comments or questions on registration and fees. So the next couple of slides are going to be about competition and the online education, coaching, and ref courses. So we're just going to go in that direction. But if there's any other questions or comments about registration and fees, Mark, go ahead.
It's not a question about registration and fees. I just wanted to go back to some ideas for what some of the organizations might want to try. Something that we do in Saskatoon and have been doing for several years now is a program called Kids in the Park. During the summer months, usually during the off season, what we do is, and this is our executive director's baby, it's Amanda Proby could probably speak more to this than I can. But her and her staff put this program on, and it is a free drop-in program that they run at 47 different neighborhood parks within Saskatoon with qualified instructors. And it's basically it's pre-advertised, signage, there's billboards, and it goes on the website as to which parks that they are going to be in. And anyone can drop in, any age, kids can drop in, and they have a great time. It's free. And the program is actually sponsored by local businesses. So it pays for itself. And it is an amazing program. And I believe last year we got around 3,000 young people playing soccer in our neighborhood parks, which was a tremendous program. So just an idea for some of the other organizations out there for something that they could maybe look at. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. We really appreciate that, sharing that piece. That's a very positive program you guys have had running for a number of years that promotes the game, and those are terrific programs that obviously are MAP eligible as well. So if you have ideas around that, that's under Lara's department. Make sure you talk to her and she can help guide you through some of that stuff. But that's a program that certainly should be applauded, and if other folks can engage the community like that, it's fantastic. I wonder, Mark, do you guys have any way of tracking registrations that come out of that free program? Maybe Amanda has comment, I'm not sure.
Yeah, because we actually give them a gift certificate. We actually give them a certificate at the end of each session. Okay. And with the contact information for soccer program and who to contact. And some of those things do actually come back to us. Yeah. I do not know the actual numbers. Amanda might be able to speak to that better than I can.
And that's fine. And if Amanda wants to jump in, that's great. Otherwise, we'll just we applaud you on that program. It's a really good example of things we can do to promote the game and be a solution to the community. And certainly at this time, when we get back to play, this is going to be needed for us. So thanks very much for sharing that, Mark. Again, questions can come and go. I'll jump to the next slide in regard to competitions. And I'll let Rahim jump in on this one and take the lead on this slide.
Doug,
yep,
just before you go away, we have one question from Shenley at Valley Soccer.
Okay.
Are other soccer associations issuing refunds? We have over 1,500 players registered and most registration fees were due prior to March 1st. We have not canceled the season, but it is not going to start April 28th like originally planned. We are wondering how other clubs or organizations are handling this.
Okay, we'll leave that open to the floor. If anybody else has any comments, appreciate sharing that with, that's Valley Soccer, I believe, Shenley. Any comments on how refunds are being managed by some of the other clubs? Eden, do you want to comment on that at all?
I just got to unmute over here. Perfect. What I would comment is essentially the organization is looking at the dates that they've put in place for their registration fees. If it's an increment payment and you have set dates that those payments are due by with the set months that programming would have been held within them, you could look at processing those types of refunds. But if you're looking at large sum payments that you've actually received transactions for at this moment, I would either contact the individuals and see if they require their refunds, with the potential of having to register again if you guys do reassess the amount of how much the program is going to cost, or possibly just informing your members that we're still going to be registrations open. We might be pushing the dates to different days. Please let us know if you need a refund. It looks like at this point it might be having to be contacting with the individuals that have registered and really just analyzing and seeing if you guys are going to keep the costs the same, what you're going to plan for future objectives for this season, when your season's going to run, and how much that's going to cost.
Thanks, Eden. I'm not sure if that was the answer you're looking for, Shenley, but if anybody else has any comments, go ahead. Amanda, I see your mic is on. Amanda, Saskatoon Youth.
Doug, we had one comment come in on the chat, just that Prince Albert will have full refund to all registrations in case of cancellation. So that was from Dragaton. Okay,
thanks, Dragaton. Amanda's mic is off again, but that's fine. If you want to join in later, that's no problem. Rob from Eastside, hand is up.
Yeah, hi Doug. Yeah, we're kind of waiting to see what happens with the local league, but we've met at a board and decided that if the league is canceled, that we'd be offering a full refund. We won't be holding any administration fees back from our members. We are going to ask them though if they'd be interested in leaving their registration with us as a credit for any future programming that may occur in the summertime or in the fall. So we're going to leave that as an option for our members to decide on.
Thanks, Rob, and I would applaud that suggestion. There is certain people, obviously, that will have financial need that want to get their refunds back. But if others are willing to leave that registration fee there as a credit for future programming, then it saves everybody time and money. So we wish you luck with that, and certainly keep in touch and share any feedback you might have if that's successful, or what kind of pushback you might get if there are any. We'd be glad to hear and share best practices of what people are doing. So thanks for that, Rod. Any other comments there, Rod?
Not really. We did figure out how much the Visa or the credit card fees would be if we did full refunds. So we're looking at probably like that $3,000 or $4,000 range in terms of cost to us. So the whole idea of offering a credit kind of comes into play with regard to that expense. So that's something we're gonna have to incur if we do issue everything back by Visa.
Yeah, there's going to definitely be a cost for you guys, that's for sure, and to any program that anybody's running for that. And so again, in some of your communications, you want to again consider asking your members to think of the long view. One of the things we don't want to have happen out of this pandemic is that we erode the foundation of organizations so that we're not in a strong position in the future to manage. So those are things that we're interested in hearing from people about what your experiences are as this moves along. I'm going to invite Raheem in to talk about the competition slide then.
Thanks, Doug. Just confirm that you can hear me.
Yep, we can hear you good. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and I'll get right to it. So some of the work and some of the conversations that we've had surround competitions. If you look at the bullet for national championships, June 30th, that's a deadline that was set by Canada Soccer to help determine whether national competitions will continue on. So any of our competitions that are leading to club nationals will follow that Canada Soccer timeline, whereas other provincial competitions, we would look to try and have some type of definitive decision by early June, and that may be reaching out to everyone and saying, you know, if soccer looks like there's a possibility of continuing on in outdoor, whether it's a later start in July or August, engaging with people to get their feedback on whether or not we can look at different timelines than what has previously happened. So our Soccer for Life youth outdoor competitions usually happen early July. You know, if we're just getting started up in early July, then what could that possibly look like, and then engage with people around then. So any questions from anyone with regards to competitions? As we go through the next slide or two, if you have some, then, you know, we can definitely jump back to it. So Doug, maybe you want to move on to the next slide.
Yeah, so take you to this in particular, Raheem, if you can talk in this section here. And Jason obviously is available as well. So talk about some of this stuff, coach education, etc. And again, Jason DeVos is available if we have more questions for him.
So Jason provided everyone with an update regarding the community stream. I had said earlier on that we'd be about 2 weeks away. So what is going to happen for us is there's a link from Canada Soccer's website to the SAS Soccer coaching courses and workshops page. We had a number of courses scheduled with member organizations. So over the next few days, you're going to hear from me. I'm going to reach out because we're going to be finalizing information on how does this new blended format work. It's not something that we've had the opportunity to do before compared to sort of the traditional model of everything happens in person. So now that things are going to happen by the theory or the in-class portion being delivered online, we have to provide information to everyone involved, get the registrations set up on our website where, you know, someone can register for an active start. The in-class, so what was it previously in-class, the theory that's going online, there's no cost for anyone to sign up for. The cost will be for the in-person portion. So there's a little bit of work that we have to do on our end to just get everything ready to go on the back end. So I'm going to say 2 weeks away, but I'm hoping that we'll over-deliver and come in under that. And any MO that has courses currently scheduled, you're going to hear from me. I should be able to provide you with information regarding what the new format looks like, how it's going to operate, and also how we're going to manage the different courses that are now online with the in-person delivery. For the C license course that happened in March and the second weekend got postponed, all of you should have heard from me. If any of you were on the call earlier today, we're going to be moving the theory portion online. There's a couple of Zoom meetings set up, and then we're also in the process of building a Google Classroom and housing some of the necessary information that we're going to do from the in-class portion there. And then, as I sort of said, for this group in their communication, once the suspension is lifted, we'll sort through an in-person delivery date so that we can then, instead of having 2 days left, it's going to look more like 1 day. In addition to all the great work that's happening from a coaching education perspective, the referee department at Canada Soccer has also done extensive work in trying to move a lot of their education online as well. So over the next 2 weeks, we're looking at getting the small-sided games and the entry-level course, along with the pre-course work, put online and in a Google Classroom as well. So referees will be able to, for example, do all of the in-class component for the entry level online early. And once we get that return to play or the suspension has been lifted, we can start to organize the in-person entry level courses.
I've got a question from Michael Gramiak, Saskatoon East Side.
Hey, Raheem, I'm just curious who's leading the C license online portion?
I'm going to be leading the C license online.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions specifically related to coach or referee education from anyone? This is an exciting opportunity. There's been a lot of work going on in a small time period to advance this piece of all the spin-off benefits that a pandemic allows. I think Jason alluded to this, crunching the work to get things ready and online is going to advance our game quite a bit as we go forward. So thoughts from anybody on any of that? We also obviously have MAP webinars again tomorrow and the day after. Walking Soccer webinar coming up. We are working on a Facebook Live celebration, SSA award celebration, and then I'll let Leanne jump in at the end. And then we have an organizer orientation webinar April 26th, and we'll talk some more about the engagement of athletes and organizers at the end. So, Lara, do you want to have a quick comment on the MAP webinars, and then we'll go to Eden, and then we'll go to Leanne.
Sure. So just it occurred to me just now, normally every other normal year, MAP deadline for applications would be tomorrow. Of course, we moved it to May 1st just to give us a little bit more time to plan appropriately and submit applications. So all of that information went out on April 2nd. We have received a few questions about the adjustments that we've made due to the COVID world, and those questions will all be addressed in tomorrow and Thursday's webinar. The same content will be delivered. There's no need to tune in twice, but I would recommend that you sign on, also especially because of the changes that we made to the special project grant. If anyone has any questions, you can for sure contact me, and I hope to see you there tomorrow. And Doug, I'll just comment on the organizer orientation. So we have what I have called the organizer orientation. This is meant to be a webinar for any new board members or any new organizers for member organizations to acquaint members to what SSA does, the programs and services we offer, some policies of ours that impact your operations, that sort of thing. So since we are in a bit of a wait period, this would be a great time to have any of those new people tune in to hear about what is available from SSA to member organizations and back, so that when we hit the ground, we can hit the ground running and everyone knows about the awesome things we have available. So please tune in, which I put on a Sunday. I'm sorry, I don't think I realized it was a Sunday, but hey, we're just going to do it and it's going to be fun.
Thanks, Lara. Eden, you want to do a quick one on Walking Soccer?
For sure. So the webinar that will be on April 21st, it's with Matt Greenwood. If some of you might have met him in the previous webinar we had at the beginning of March. He brings a lot of expertise as executive director and actually working and promoting active living for adults 55 plus. And he's had a great success with his Walking Soccer program. He's going to share some of his tips and tricks on how to get people engaged and what to do and what areas who you should reach out to get people involved in your Walking Soccer program. This is not just for adult soccer organizations. This is open to youth and adult soccer organizations that want to see how they can get more people excited about walking soccer in their communities. So the registration link is on our website at sassoccer.com. If you have any questions about it, feel free to contact me. Thanks.
Thanks, Eden. Leanne, you want to jump on this award celebration first? This is a really exciting thing you're trying to get going.
Sure. So we are going to try something new. We're going to have our award celebration on Facebook Live. So that means the video of the award celebration will be on Facebook at 7 p.m. on April 23rd. I've been working on securing some special guests that will make appearances throughout the evening. And we will announce all of the winners. So some winners have already been announced, but some are still waiting to find out if they won their award. So no physical trophies will be handed out, but we have a great host and we're working with a great production company to put this on, and really looking forward to that.
Well, thanks so much for your leadership on that, Leanne. That's really a great opportunity for us to take some time out and celebrate and put something positive into our lives. So really want to acknowledge your leadership on that. So thanks.
Yeah. We have a couple comments that have come in on the chat here. So from Weyburn, they're also, so going back to Shenley's question about the fees and refunds, Weyburn Soccer will also be doing full refunds. Wendy from Meridian Soccer said that Meridian Soccer is asking families if they want to leave their fees in a credit for future use, and all other fees will be returned by e-transfer. So they've spoken with their bank and will be returning fees by e-transfer at no fee to the club.
That's a good idea. Thank you for sharing that, Wendy.
So Lewis from Lakewood just asked about what might a shortened PSL season look like, and if there's any thoughts around this yet.
Sure, I can definitely answer that. So we've been working on a series of different ideas of what the PSL could look like based on the time. So for example, if we get back to normal play June 1st, then for the most part, we've only lost a week of the PSL season, so something may exist. But we're working on some different iterations of what that may be. And on the next call on April 28th, we're hoping to have something a little bit more fleshed out to provide a bit more tangible, a tangible view for everyone on what that could all be like.
And obviously, PSL leads to Club Nationals, so it's important that we keep that concept alive until those events are ultimately, we hope that they go forward, obviously, and so that's, hopefully that's productive, Raheem. Thank you for that. So we're drawing close to the end and want to make sure we invite other questions and comments for folks. So, you know, one of the focuses of what's going on during the suspension, and if anybody has comments on that and any activities you're doing, what are you planning? Let's also take the time to share best practices and post things to social media and celebrate the good things that are happening. I know that there was a very popular event from Canada Soccer with John Herdman here recently, and Canada Soccer is planning multiple things in what they have housed as Canada Soccer Nation indoors. So make sure you're looking at the Canada Soccer platform for other ways to engage. But is there any other thoughts from anybody on programming during suspension, things that you are considering that we haven't maybe talked about yet? If not, then I'll just open up to any final or getting close to the end type questions. If there's topics you'd like to talk about that we haven't discussed yet that are focused on contingency planning for the most part, feel free to raise your hand.
I think Rod's got his hand up there, Doug.
Yeah, thank you. Rod, go ahead from your side.
Yeah, first of all, thanks, Doug, for putting this on tonight. We really appreciate the information. I have a question for probably Jason. And I think, Doug, you kind of touched on it earlier. I'm curious to know CSA and how they're approaching the different regions of the country and potentially lifting the suspensions on programming. And then the second part to that would be, if we get into future programming for possibly an indoor season and COVID comes back, I'm curious to know if there's any talk or discussion on, you know, how regions are going to be treated in the event that happens, where maybe it blows up in the east and not in Saskatchewan or certain regions, will there be will they look at that as when they come down to suspending activities potentially again?
Thanks, Rod. Jason DeVos, are you up for jumping in on that?
Yeah,
Otherwise,
sure. No problem. It's a great question, and it's definitely one that's been asked previously in other discussions with different groups. You know, and essentially is you know, how do we go about starting back up again? We're very much guided by the Government of Canada and the Public Health Agency of Canada. So I think, you know, I think the best recommendation would be to follow the guidance and the advice of your provincial health agencies and your health authorities as to what their recommendations are. Keep monitoring social media is a good one to get updates and get links to articles that are posted by Canada Soccer. We will always amplify the messaging coming from the government through our different digital platforms. So just keep your finger on the pulse is probably the best advice that I can give you. I can't tell you today what it's going to look like because it's something I simply don't have the answer to. But we're always being in discussion with the government to see exactly what they are recommending, and we're obviously following their guidance and their advice on all of this. So stay tuned, keep your ear to the ground, and obviously, through our relationship with Saskatchewan Soccer, we will keep you informed via that channel for sure.
thanks, Rod, for the question, and Jason for your answer. Anything else there, Rod?
No, that's good. So there hasn't been any discussion on. I know it's it's hard to know what's going to happen in the future, but there is no discussion on treating different regions of the country based on their situation. Then I take Jason.
Yeah, I mean, the question's been asked, Rod, and again, I would just stress that we simply don't have the answer to that at this moment in time. We will be, in ongoing discussion with the government as to what their recommendation. The government may come back and say everything's fine in Saskatchewan, but other parts of the country are still in lockdown. We just don't have that information at this stage, but that might be one of the possibilities. But I think at this stage, it's a little early to speculate what could happen. I think it was someone else that on the call earlier, plan for the worst and hope for the best. And that's absolutely the right approach to be taking. You should have contingency plans in place for a worst case scenario, but also contingencies in place in case the suspension of soccer activity is lifted and we can return to play. So again, stay tuned, keep monitoring the different communication channels and having discussions like this with the SSA is a great way to stay in touch.
Okay, thanks, Jason.
Thanks, guys. Again, we're approaching 9:28. If there's other questions, we'll take a couple more. And again, we are preparing for April 28th, next call with membership. So we're going to continue to communicate with you folks. We'll send out a weekly update as best we can. We have calls regularly and more often as required. We want to continue to hear from you and hear your best practices. What are the decisions? What are the tough times? What are you working through? We'd love to stay connected. So please share with us as you need. Most importantly, how can we help? That's what we're here to do. We're here to serve and to make the game better, and it will be better when we come out of this, but there's a lot of work ahead of us. So leave it to the floor for any final questions before we sign off. Hearing none. Lisa, do you want to send us out the door with any thoughts?
Oh, Doug, I have one thing that came up on the chat here.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Just Mark from Saskatoon Youth said that if anyone wanted some information on the soccer kids in the park that was mentioned earlier, they can email Amanda Proby at Saskatoon Youth Soccer for more information.
Thanks very much, Mark, and to Amanda for working and sharing. We very much appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks, Doug, and thanks to everybody on the call tonight. I think sharing everybody's perspectives and what's going on throughout the province is really helpful, and you know, we can all learn from each other about what everybody's doing. So I look forward to our next call and continuing the sharing and then these experiences. As we've said previously, this is uncharted territory, and we're all, you know, just trying to get through it. And if we can do it together, we'll come out stronger on the end. So thanks for everybody for coming on the call tonight. If there's any last words, now's the time. Otherwise, I'll let Doug sign us off.
Thanks. Our special guest, DeVos, Warren Proctor, was on in listening mode, which we appreciate. Thanks to the board of directors and the staff for helping us prepare, but mostly thanks to you folks, the members, for caring about soccer and making it important and taking time out of a difficult time to prepare for a game that people love to play and prepare for that potential despite difficult times. Jason DeVos, you want to say your goodbyes, and after that we'll head out.
Absolutely. Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Lisa. Thank you, everyone, for participating. And, you know, I'll echo everyone's comments. Be safe, be the solution, look after each other. When we get back on the field, we will have a wonderful celebration of soccer, and we're going to need each other when we get to that point. So if you need help, if you need any assistance, don't hesitate to reach out and ask for it. That's what we're here for. So have a great night, everyone, and stay safe.
Thanks very much, Jason, and thanks everybody. And we wish you the very best. Look for our communication. It'll come out this Friday again, and we'll keep communicating and ask for what you need. And we really appreciate all that you do very much for everyone that loves this game of soccer. So thanks very much, everybody. And with that, it's good night. Thank you very much, Leanne, for logistics tonight. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jason.